Hello and welcome to the in-new series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Dwivedi, and in this segment today, we are going to discuss about eco-sensitive zones. Now, this topic is very important from the perspective of prelims. We have to know the factual information about Neyyar and Peppara Wildlife Sanctuaries, also about eco-sensitive zones and do's and don'ts. From the perspective of mains examination, concerns of the locals and what the government is doing to address them, we can see that these are important, the analytical part as well as the facts. And if I talk about yesterday's question, I asked a question with respect to the type of architecture under Kalinga style for Lingaraj temple. Many of you have answered it correctly. I'm just going to tell the names of those who have answered it correctly, the earliest ones. Okay. So yes, if I say Koyal has answered it correctly, this is a Rekha dual style of architecture with respect to Lingaraj temple. And another Aishwarya Adhav has said about the second question which I asked with respect to, is there any other temple which comes under a special law in Odisha for redevelopment or development? That was Jagannath temple. This is also correct. And also Sujit has answered correctly. And we also have Arvind Kumar who has answered the second question, Puri temple. And also, yes, Abhishek Dhyani, Devorati Das, many of you have answered it correctly. So now I have also introduced one prelims based question in the current segment. Do watch the entire segment for answering it correctly. And again, I will have the same kind of interaction with you for those who will answer it correctly at the earliest possible. Okay. So this goes like that the Neyyar and Peppara Wildlife Sanctuaries, certain parts of it are going to be declared as eco-sensitive zones, which is not sitting well with the inhabitants of the place. And that is why there are protests. What is the factual information about the Neyyar and Peppara Wildlife Sanctuary? Peppara Wildlife Sanctuary, this is the first part that I am going to discuss here. It is a wildlife sanctuary in the Thiruvananthapuram district of Kerala, and it has the catchment area of Karmana river, which flows from the, or it has its source from the Chimon-Jimotai, which is the tallest hill within the sanctuary of Peppara. Peppara Wildlife Sanctuary has its name because of the Peppara Dam, which was constructed or commissioned in the year 1983. And then only it was declared a wildlife sanctuary, and that dam was established in order to provide drinking water to the people of Thiruvananthapuram. It has tropical moist evergreen forests and Mysterica swamps. Now, what are Mysterica swamps? These are freshwater swamps, okay? Freshwater, not brackish, but freshwater. They have stilt root, adventitious roots, for providing more nutrient to the plants, and this is a very important feature of Sundarbans as well, right? So Mysterica is a fragrant species, which is a very unique feature of Neyyar and Peppara Wildlife Sanctuary. So it is a part of the Agasthyamalai Biosphere Reserve, both Neyyar and Peppara, and the species that are found here are tiger, leopard, sloth bear, elephant, sambar, bonnet macaque, Nilgiri, langur and Nilgiri tar, which is an endemic species of Western Ghats. Now we know that Western Ghats is high on endemism, right? Now we talk about Neyyar Wildlife Sanctuary, which is in the southern state of Kerala in India, and it is in the southeast corner of Western Ghats. It was declared as a sanctuary in 1958, only after the 1980s. Only after the 1980s, when a separate wildlife wing was set up, then only the result or the conservation status was improved. It is the part of the Agasthyamalai Biosphere Reserve, and this is the drainage basin for rivers such as Neyyar, the name of the wildlife sanctuary, and its tributaries are Mullayar and Kallar. Okay, remember that. The towering peak of Agasthyamalai is situated here only. Agasthyamalai at an elevation of 1868 meters is a very prominent feature. Remember these facts very well. Moving on, if we see this map, here is Peppara and here is Neyyar. This is a part of the Agasthyamalai Wildlife Sanctuary, and as I told you that high endemism is there with respect to Western Ghats. That is why it is a biodiversity hotspot, and that is why we need eco-sensitive zones over there, also keeping in mind the welfare of the people. So this is the chart just to walk you through. Moving on, if we talk about eco-sensitive zones, these are ecologically fragile areas which work as shock absorbers. Suppose this is an area high sensitivity with respect to species, and here people live. If people will cut trees, have their other industrialization process, development programs here, of course, there will be a problem to this area. So in order to provide a buffer, okay, this is a buffer from the core area to the habitation, we need eco-sensitive zone so that it can act as a shock absorber. If I tell this person, do not enter this area because it has tigers, the person might go till here and then here, and then the person might return because we have increased the distance from the actual inhabited area to the core area by the eco-sensitive zone. So it will act as a shock absorber. Then Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change around protected areas, national parks and wildlife sanctuaries declare these areas as eco-sensitive zones, and it could be declared up to 10 kilometers and around a protected area which is provided in the Wildlife Conservation Strategy of 2002. National Board for Wildlife has said there should be a site-specific eco-sensitive zone. With respect to the Neyyar and Peppara, it is in the western side of the sanctuaries, approximately 2 kilometers in the west, and in the northwest it is also approximately 2 kilometers. Okay, site-specific, and the activity should be regulative in nature, not prohibitive unless required. So the government also knows that people are dependent on forests. People or tribes who have been living there for so many centuries, decades, centuries, whatever, they are dependent on the process, whichever they go into with respect to their own occupation. Other than that, for the forest produce as well. So, you know, it should be regulative. There can be regulation, keeping in mind the people, not prohibitive. Okay. They also act as a transition zone from areas of high protection to areas involving lesser protection. And eco-sensitive zones are not at all explicitly talked about in any of the act. How we know that? Because Section 3 of the Environment Protection Rules has said that the central government can declare any area as eco-sensitive zone for the conservation as well as the betterment of the ecosystem. And Rule 5, Clause 1 of the Environment Protection Act of 1986, it says that the central government can regulate activities and restrict activities with respect to eco-sensitive zones. And it is not, the term is eco-sensitive zone is not mentioned, but it is saying that you can have any sort of regulation with respect to restriction. You can also restrict certain activities up to whatever the sectors might be. You are thinking that it is going to hurt the environment. Other than that, Clause 3, 2V of the same Environment Protection Act says that the area can also be situated, the area can also be restricted, not only the kind of activity but the area of activity. So the government came up with the concept of eco-sensitive zone. It is nowhere mentioned. Remember, again, it can be asked in prelims. Okay. However, moving on, we talk about the do's and don'ts in the economic sensitive zone. Before that, let's see which are the areas that are involved in the Peppara and Nayyer wildlife sanctuaries who are at a loss with respect to eco-sensitive zone. Kalikkad and Amburi, Varzichal village and Manukara and Vithura villages. The biggest loser here is Amburi. They have lost approximately 10 of their wards which are coming into eco-sensitive zone because certain activities are permitted, certain are regulated and certain are prohibited. Permitted are ongoing agriculture or horticultural practices, rainwater harvesting, organic farming. Also, we have uses of renewable energy sources, adoption of green technology for activities. Regulated are felling of trees, establishments of hotels and resorts, commercial use of natural water, erection of electrical cables, and drastic change of agriculture system, widening of roads. Prohibited ones are commercial mining, sawmills, industries causing pollution, establishment of major hydroelectric projects, also commercial use of wood, tourism activities like hot air balloon over the national park, and discharge of effluents or any other solid waste and the production of hazardous substances. Certain processes are encouraged, such as use of renewable energy, organic farming, water harvesting. These are encouraged. Okay, with respect to process of regulation for the Peppara and Nayyer Wildlife Sanctuary, a zonal master plan will be made. With respect to regulation, how will the regulation of activities take place? For that, a master plan for tourism will also be there. With respect to sustainable and regulated tourism plan, that will be a part of the zonal master plan. Okay, then we have a monitoring committee which will be chaired by the district collector. District panchayat president will be a part of it. A representative of a non-governmental organization involved in natural conservation, an expert in ecology and environment from a reputed institution, also in this from a university of the state, representative of the Kerala State Biodiversity Board, and Thiruvananthapuram Wildlife Warden as member secretary. Okay, let's move forward and talk about the prelims question. Again, this is the question that I'm going to ask. You have to answer me as earliest as possible. Okay, I'll take the names there. With respect to eco-sensitive zones, consider the following statements. The term eco-sensitive zone is mentioned in the Environment Protection Act 1986 and also the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Widening of roads and commercial mining is completely prohibited in an eco-sensitive zone. We have to select the correct statement or statements. Okay, answer it correctly and as soon as possible. So what are the concerns of the people who are living there? First, it could adversely impact their normal life and whatever growth prospects there are. Of course, people who are totally dependent on their area of living, they are at a loss. Again, the Hill Highway project, which is the development project, that can also be hindered. Not only that, but there is a problem with respect to phased migration. Once they start losing their occupation because of an eco-sensitive zone, they can move away from that area to different other areas. For people who have been living there since last 7 decades, it's a very huge problem. It can create difficulties in chopping down the trees for replanting. I'm talking here about the rubber plantation, which people of Nayyer and Peppara Wildlife Sanctuary do. It also, the people are demanding the exclusion of inhabited areas from such regulation. Amburi and Kalikad Gram Panchayats have observed hartals. Now, what can the government do? The state government is saying that the government has endorsed the need to modify the contours of the zone. We can also have a contour of the eco-sensitive zone as well. Less restricted, more restricted, completely restricted, like that. The state government will be provided an opportunity to submit the final report with respect to what the people of the area are thinking, because the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, it gives 60 days to give any sort of opinions and suggestions. But at the last, state government can also have a say with respect to the opinion of the people. Example of Tadikad Bird Sanctuary in Ernakulam district can be cited, where the eco-sensitive zone, as it was hurting the industry of the people, from 28 to it was lessened from 28, much lessened, keep that in mind. I don't remember exactly how much, but from 28 it went very much down. Then we have rehabilitation and compensation. People who are moving from there or who have their occupation other than from the place they were having their occupation in the eco-sensitive zone, they can be compensated and rehabilitated, which is a huge, tough job, but it can be done. Better opportunities shall be provided for people who are agreeing to an eco-sensitive zone being established over there. For that, they should also get incentives because they are the unsung warriors of the ecosystem protection. Community involvement. As I said, the National Board for Wildlife said it should be regulative, not extremely restrictive and prohibitive. So we cannot have community expulsion, completely just tell the community whichever is staying there to go away. We can involve them so that better protection can take place. Let's move forward and talk about our question. What are eco-sensitive zones? What are the concerns of the populace related whenever an eco-sensitive zone is declared? Write it in 250 words, okay? So that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.